I saw my cousin Nikki's on. I hope my mom is on here because this talk is really in memory of my father. But given that the commandment is kibud av va'em, I also want to honor my mother, and I do have the real zchut, the good fortune of having both my mother-in-law and my father-in-law on here, and I'm honoring them too. And I have the great fortune to have some great teachers. One of them just spoke, and he helped me here is Rabbi Michael Paley, Rabbi David Hoffman, who is a wonderful teacher, helped me, and I benefited from some of the online resources from Rabbi Soloveitchik and Rabbi Mark Greenspan. So I don't want to take any credit for their wonderful work. So today I'm going to be talking about the commandment, right? It's Shavuot. This is the time to talk about, Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of giving the Torah. And in our imaginations, I think we all see the 10 Commandments as part of the revelation of the giving of the Torah. And so what I want to talk about today is, what are the rules of this commandment to honor your parents? Why is it here? What are the loopholes? What are the rules? How far do you have to go? When does it end? And to get the answers, we're going to talk about what it says in the Torah, what it says in the Talmud, what the rabbis and the Rambam have to say. And then I'm going to tell you a personal story that has caused for me this searching in Judaism for what the answers to these questions are, a real problem I have that I think you all find entertaining and interesting. And then I'll tell you where I've come out on it. And so there are two parts of the Torah where the 10 Commandments sit. It comes in Exodus during the journey at Mount Sinai. And you have the first 3 commandments, which are all about God. I am the Lord your God. Don't worship any other gods. Don't use my name. Don't curse my name. Don't use it wrongly. Then there is the commandment to keep the Sabbath. And then it says, Kaved et avicha v'et imecha l'man yerachun yamecha al hadama asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. Honor your mother and father that you may long endure on the land that the Lord your God is assigning to you. And this is the one commandment that is there that tells you what the consequence is. And it's a positive consequence. Honor your parents. Doesn't say anything about love your parents. It says honor your parents, honor your father and your mother, so that you will have long days on the land, right? It ties it to the land that God is going to give you. It ties it to the land of Israel. And then we have it again in Deuteronomy, where it says, Kaved et avicha v'et imecha. So it's the same thing, the first 3 God-focused commandments. Then number 4 is the Sabbath, and then number 5, again, and there's just a slight change. It says, Laman yarichin yamecha, and so that your days will be long, Laman yativ lacha, and so that you will do well. It will be good for you, that your days on the land will be good for you. So the first time you're going to get the land, the second time they talk about it, you're going to live on the land and you're going to have a good life. And again, it's about honoring your parents. Then in Leviticus, Rabbi Paley talks about his favorite parsha, Kedoshim, which talks about how you can be kodesh, how you can be holy. And it begins, V'yedaber Adonai Moshe lemor, and God spoke to Moses, Daber el kol adat bnei Yisrael, speak to the entire Israelite community, V'amarta alehem kedoshim ti'yu, and you shall tell them that you should be holy, ki kadosh ani, because I am holy. I, your Lord God, am holy. And then the first thing it says, ish, a person, imo ve'aviv, his mother and his father, tira'u. And tira'u, here it is translated as revere. From the Hebrew that I learned, it is fear, right? You should fear your mother and your father. And then it says, Ve'et Shabbotai tishmaru, and then you will keep my Sabbath, because I am the Lord your God. So it's very interesting here that it says, again, it's not about love. It doesn't tell you to love your parents. It says, fear your mother and your father, and keep my Sabbath. And in one of the earlier sessions today, Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove gave a very interesting talk about Sinai, and he spoke about the laws that the Israelites were expected to follow in between getting the Torah and the Noahide laws. The Noahide laws are laws that applies to everyone, Jewish or not Jewish. The Torah belongs to the Jews. You're required to keep the commandments of the Torah. But then he said there are 3 laws that the Jews were responsible for even before getting the Torah. 2 of them are here. It's keeping the Sabbath and honoring your parents. So it shows you again how important and how core to Judaism this idea of honoring your parents is. The other thing I'll say about it is when you think about the 10 Commandments, there are 2 tablets. And the rabbis talk about the first tablet, the first 5 being God-based, and the second 5 meaning, don't steal, don't murder, etc., don't covet, being man-to-man based. Honoring thy parents, consistent with what we're learning here, what the Torah says in Leviticus. Honoring your parents is part of the God-based commandments, right? You want to worship God, you want to respect God, you want to honor God. Begin by honoring, revering, and fearing your parents. When you look at the Talmud, you learn about what the rabbis think in Kiddushin. And the first thing you learn is that they don't think this is an easy commandment. They think it's very hard. Rabbi Yochanan says, fortunate is the one who never saw his father and mother, as it is so difficult to honor them appropriately. The Gemara relates that Rabbi Yochanan himself never met his parents because his mother died in pregnancy, and his father died while she was pregnant. And he talks about how fortunate it is to have never met your parents because it is so hard to keep the commandment. Then we have this crazy story of Rav Asi. I'm going to take you through quickly and give you my interpretation of it. So Rav Asi, then this immediately follows the part about Rabbi Yochanan and talking about how lucky you are to never meet your parents. Rav Asi has an elderly mother. She says to him, I want jewelry. So he makes her jewelry. Then she says, I want a husband. She's elderly, a little strange. He says, okay, I will find you a husband. Then she says to him, I want a husband as beautiful as you. The next line is, he left her and went to Israel. Then he hears that she's following him to Israel. He goes to Rabbi Yochanan and says to him, I want to leave Israel. And the halakha says that once you arrive in Israel, you're not allowed to leave. But I hear that my mother's coming and I want to go. Rabbi Yochanan says, look, I'm sorry, it's prohibited. Rav Asi asks again, if one is going to greet his mother, I know she's traveling, I want to go greet her. What do you think then? Rav Yochanan, not quite believing the story, says, I don't know. Rav Asi waits a while, comes back to him, and asks again. Rav Asi says, well, looks like you're determined to leave. May God grant you peace on your return. Part 3 of the story. Rav Asi comes before Rabbi Elazar, who's another student of Rabbi Yochanan, and says, listen, is he angry with me? I don't like the way he answered me. Rav Elazar tries to get a clearance of the story. They debate it for a while. He convinces Rav Asi that it's okay. You've got permission to leave. And then just as he's about to go, he finds out his mother has died and his coffin was brought to Israel. And he says, had I known, I would not have left. And there's much debate about would he not have left Israel? Would he have not come? What was the mistake? And I'll tell you my reading of this. And it's personal, and I'll come to that part of the story later. The mother was elderly. She's asking for jewelry, a little weird. She's asking to get married, even weirder. Then she says, I want someone as beautiful as you. I think she's clearly got some dementia, and he's freaking out. right? His mother's asking him, talking about his beauty. Is this Freudian? This is weird. He doesn't want any part of it. It's embarrassing. It's awkward. And so he hightails it out of there. And so he's not taking care of his sick mother, even though she's a little crazy. He doesn't want to do anything that's going to be part of that craziness. And then he misses his opportunity and she dies. And he lives with that regret. And the lesson I think here is, don't make that mistake. Your parents are going to get old. They're going to lose some of their faculties. You're responsible to take care of them. And this is consistent with what the Rambam says, right? The Rambam talks about all the different types of things that you may have to deal with and what you're responsible for. And basically what he says is that, first of all, and Danny Nevins talks about this in one of the conservative books on Judaism, that the honoring your parents, honoring your mother and your father, is not a commandment for kids. Kids do it naturally. They love their parents. And it's not for people to think, well, my parents were good, so I'm going to honor them, but they're bad, so I'm not. No, this is a commandment that as your parents get older, you are responsible to honor them. I have a good friend who recently lost his father, and they had a very tough relationship. His father was not a good father by any definition. They had a very tough relationship, and it was a very tough end-of-life situation. But one thing this guy did very well is he took care monetarily of his parents. And by the way, that is specified in what the Rambam talks about. You are responsible to take care of your parents. You're responsible to pay for their needs. And even if your father spits in his face and embarrasses you publicly, you are still responsible to take care and look out for your parents and not respond to them the way they are responding to you. And there's a debate between Maimonides, between the Rambam and the Ravad, another contemporary of the Rambam, about whether you can even hire someone to take care of your parents if it gets so difficult. The Rambam says you can. You don't have to take care of them yourself. If you can't, if you found that their dementia is too difficult, the Ravad says you must. So my father died this past September. My father was born in 1932 in Romania, and he was part of a Hasidic family. The Hasidic group that my father was part of was called Vizhnitz. As a child in Romania, he grew up as a Vizhnitz. His father was a Vizhnitzer Hasid, right? The black coat, the white shirt, the hat, the strommel, the whole deal. My father and his siblings, even while they were still in Romania, and they only got out in 1962, they left Orthodoxy, but my dad really kept up a kesher, really kept up a connection to the Vizhnitz community. And I'm just going to tell you, my family history goes back very far, basically to the time of the Baal Shem Tov. It's been traced as Vizhnitz Hasidim. And the Baal Shem Tov, the one who started the Hasidic movement, one of his disciples was this Yaakov Koppel. His son was Menachem Mendel Hager, was the first Hager to be a Rebbe. 2 generations later, the family moves to Vizhnitz in the Hungary region, and the Vizhnitz movement, in the mid 1800s begins. The Rebbe at the time when my father grew up was a guy named Chaim Meir Hager. They call him the Imre Chaim. He died in 1972. He had 2 children, and that's really where my story begins. Moshe, who they called Reb Moshe, who moved to Israel after leaving Europe after the war, and he became known as the Bnei Brak Vizhnitzer Rebbe, and his brother they called him Reb Moti Mordechai Hager, who was the Rebbe in Muncie. I grew up in Canada, and I remember my father really caring about his Vizhnitzer roots. I remember the Vizhnitzer Rebbe would come from Bnei Brak to Montreal. My dad would take me. We would visit him. He would come to Toronto when my grandfather was still alive. We'd go Friday night for his tish. It wasn't a big part of our life, but it was always there. And my dad always said he liked the Bnei Brak rabbi. He didn't like the Monsey rabbi. The Bnei Brak was Reb Moshe was very warm, very friendly, much like what you see when you see the Lubavitchers, very inviting. And Reb Mordechai was a lot harder. My dad, the big charitable move of his life is Reb Moshe asked him to build a Talmud Torah, and this is a picture of it. And in 1989, my father built this building. He was incredibly proud of it. His name was on it, and and he honored his parents by having their name on it as well. Every trip to Israel, he would visit. He would sing with the kids. He really had a lot of pride and love in this building. And to show you how deep the roots is, this is my father. My father developed Alzheimer's in 2008. He lived with it for about 11 years until he died, as I said, in September. And, by the last few years, he didn't know where he was. He didn't know what city he was in. I mean, he still remembered me, but he really didn't know a lot. But one thing he could still do, and I'll play you a little clip, was sing the Vishnitzer Eshet Chayil. So that's my dad. In 2012, this rabbi that he was very close to, Reb Moshe in Bnei Brak, died. Reb Moshe had two sons. One was very much like him, the younger brother, Menachem Mendel, and the older brother, who was much harder, more like his uncle, Reb Yisrael. When Reb Moshe died, they both became Rebbes, and they each had their own group of followers. But Yisrael inherited my dad, all the buildings. He was the older brother, including the school that my dad donated. And over the years, we kept up the relationship with the younger brother, Reb Menachem Mendel. So here's where my story begins. And I'm gonna change to a different photo. I went to Israel with my good friend Rodney. You can see Rodney here and me. We went to participate in the Aline bike ride. Me riding. We went to the Kotel, the big cause of my life. One of the big causes, besides of course the JCC, has been sponsoring a Kabbalat Shabbat at the Kotel, an egalitarian Kabbalat Shabbat at the southern end of the Kotel, and there's my friend Rodney and me. And so I went to Israel for the purpose of the bike ride, and we were arriving there on, we left on Tuesday, we were arriving on Wednesday. And on Monday, I realized, my dad had just died, and there's this whole Vishnitz connection. And I wanted, while I had a few days before the bike ride started, to make some connection to the Vishnitz community. And so I called the people who I call one of the emissaries of the Rebbe who had come to my dad's funeral, whose name was Mendel. And I said, Mendel, listen, I'm going to Israel. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going to arrive there on Wednesday. I have one free day, which is Thursday, and I'd like to do a few things. One, I'd like to go see the building my father built. I would like to meet the Rebbe if that's possible, and I want to get fitted for a strommel. I think tactile things are important. The talit, the tefillin. I remember my grandfather wearing a strommel. I have this connection, this history with this Hasidic community. I'm not Hasidic in any way. My children aren't going to be Hasidic, but I want that connection to be alive in their minds. And I think that the strommel will help do that. So he says, no problem. And he introduces me to his counterpart in Israel, Shlomo. And Shlomo says, yes, of course, we'd love to see you in 2 days. I'll come pick you up at the hotel. I'm like, please don't pick me up. I'll hire a car. He's like, no, I insist. I want to pick you up. I'm like, okay, fine, pick me up. But remember, I want to get a strommel. I want to see the Rebbe. Oh, one other thing. I want to see my father's building, and both my grandparents are buried in Bnei Brak in the Vishnitz community. I want to visit my grandparents' graves. He says, okay, no problem. Thursday morning, he picks me up at my hotel in Tel Aviv. I get in the car and he says, okay, so we're doing 4 things, right? Getting the strommel, going to your grandparents' grave, you're going to meet the Rebbe, and we're going to take you to see the building. Great. Everybody's happy. All right. So first we go to a strommel maker. I learned there are 7 strommel makers for, many 100,000 Hasidim in Israel. There are different types of furs. I'm Canadian. I chose Canadian fox. They fitted me. It will take 2 months to make it. Fun experience. Great. All of a sudden, Shlomo gets a phone call. He picks up the phone. He looks. He says, listen, the Rebbe's ready to see you. We got to go. Like, all right, good. I want to see the Rebbe. I get my audience now. We run down to the car. We get in the car. We drive out. We're in a city called Elad, which is it's like a new city, much like Modi'in, if any of you have been there. And but it's for the Haredi community. But it's beautiful, brand new. And so we're driving in Elad, and we're in a roundabout, and he pulls over. And I go, what's going on? He goes, oh, we're waiting for the Rebbe. So I'm like, oh, I thought I'd get to go to his office. It looks like it's going to be a meet and greet on the street. All right, whatever. I'll meet him. I'll greet him. I'll say hi. He'll console me for the loss of my father, and we'll move on. So he says, so we wait, and then a procession of 4 cars come. They line up behind us, and we start going. I'm like, where are we going? He goes, the Rebbe wants you to have some connections to some students. So we're taking you to a Talmud Torah, to a school. I'm like, okay. He goes, don't worry, we're still going to see, you got your strommel, you're still going to see your grandparents' grave, and we're going to visit your father's building. But first we're going to go to the school. I'm like, okay, sounds reasonable. My dad would have loved it. I'm sure I'll enjoy it. And as we're getting towards the school, he goes, by the way, the kids are going to be all dressed up. They're going to be wearing white shirts. They don't get that much exposure to the Rebbe. This is like a big moment for them. And he's going to teach the kids their first Mishnah. I'm like, oh, cool. They're going to learn a Mishnah. Fine. I guess I'll learn a Mishnah. Great. So we pull up, and I see a big crowd of Hasidim. And, chas v'shalom, God forbid that, when the Rebbe walks anywhere, he always has to be surrounded by his Hasidim. And so there's this whole rigmarole of trying to get in front of that Rebbe's car to make sure when he opens the door, he's surrounded by Hasidim. And he gets out, and I get out of our car. And all of a sudden, I see all these kids lined up as far as I can see, all in white shirts with a big gold sash across their chest. I'm like, oh, nice. And the Rebbe gets out of the car, and he's dressed in very fine silk. And the Hasidim all escort him. He walks over to me, and he shakes my hand, and he hugs me. And then all of a sudden, everybody breaks out into song, and they start singing, and they're clapping. And the Hasidim form a big line, and the kids are in a line, and we're walking between them. The Rebbe's holding my hand. And I'm a little taken. It's a little emotional. What's going on? Of course, in my head, I'm going, what's this going to cost me? What is going on? What are their expectations here? I really don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what is going on. And I just see these gold sashes on the on the chest of these couple hundred kids. And the Rebbe walks over to one of the kids and he shows me the sash, and on the sash it says, in Hebrew, this is, for the honor of the visit of Mr. Jeff Feig, for the commemoration of his father, after the sad occasion of his passing. And each of the kids are wearing this sash with my name and my father's name on it. And I'm like, what is going on here? And we're walking, and all of a sudden, this tall guy walks up to us, and they introduce me to a guy named Meir Porush, who is the mayor of Elad, and he is the son of Chaim Porush, who is a member of Knesset and the deputy minister of education. And his grandfather was also a very well-known member of Knesset. And the mayor turns to me and he goes, "Oh, today I am jealous of you that you get to walk here hand in hand with the Rebbe." And everybody's still singing and clapping. And we walk to the end of the street, and they take me and they show me a big piece of land. They go, "Look, over here is where we plan on building the Talmud Torah for the city of Elad." And they take out plans and they show me the plans. And again, I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. And then they take me down into a brand new, a big auditorium. And the first thing I see is a giant, like 8-10 feet poster with a massive picture of my father on it. And again, the same writing that was on the sashes for the occasion of the visit of Jeff Feig, the teaching of the Mishnah by the Rebbe, to commemorate the memory of Mr. Shimon Feig, my father. We walk into an ulam, a huge auditorium. It's filled. They take me to a head table. Behind me is a picture of my father. In front of me is a picture of my father. There are candles on the table that all have pictures of my father, and they seat the mayor and me and the Rebbe and 2 other people. And we light the candles. And they give me one of the fire starter things. And I light my candle and I give it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's struggling, and there's 5 people trying to help the Rebbe light the candle. Finally, he lights it. And then the mayor gets up and gives a speech about how I'm, here, and I'm their partner in this effort to build this school. And I honestly don't know what they are talking about. And then he asks the Rebbe's permission that he has to go to Jerusalem to finish the negotiations on the government loan guarantees and grants for the purchase. And the Rebbe gives him permission, and he leaves. And then the next thing that happens is 2 kids come up and they perform a play. And this is all being done in Hebrew. And the play is, do you know who Arthur Feig was? The reminder for all of you, that's my father. And the kid responds, "I don't know who Mr. Arthur Feig was." The other kid goes, "Let me tell you who Mr. Arthur Feig is." And he starts to tell him this whole story about my father's life and my grandfather's life. And, one kid's a good speaker, one kid's a real mumbler. The Rebbe can't hear him, so he keeps hitting the person next to him, saying, "Hey, what did the kid say?" The person responds to him in Yiddish. The Rebbe then translates the Yiddish to Hebrew for me, and the thing goes on. When they finish, they bring out some cake. I get cake. The Rebbe gets cake. He dedicates which lucky people will get a little piece of cake too. He pours a little slivovitz. We all drink a l'chaim. Then the Rebbe gets up and speaks, and he gives this long speech remembering my grandfather and my grandfather's trips to Israel, and my grandfather's trip staying with his grandfather and the relationship my grandfather had with his grandfather, stuff I have never heard of. And he finishes his speech, and now it's time for him to teach the Mishnah. And he happens to teach the one Mishnah I actually know. And it's basically him teaching me with all the kids listening, and I'm responding. And it was really a wonderful and interesting and completely bizarre experience. Then in probably the nicest moment, the 2 of us stood up and we said Kaddish for my father. Then the music started. They played music. We danced together. A few people joined in on the dancing. The Rebbe gave me a hug, said goodbye, and he left. And then they brought chips, bags of chips, and all the kids lined up. And one by one, I gave up all the chips. And then they left. And so I left, I went to some meetings, went on my bike ride. And the whole time I'm trying to figure out, what is my responsibility here? I loved my father. I respected my father. I got a lot from my father, right? I inherited a business sense. I inherited, a knack for wanting to do things, to make things happen. I'm going to inherit money from my father. What is my responsibility? I am not ultra-Orthodox. I'm not Orthodox. I'm not in the Haredi community. Most of them would throw up if they knew about this egalitarian Kabbalat Shabbat that I'm spending so much time, effort, and money on to make it happen at the Kotel. What is my responsibility? What does Judaism tell me about my responsibility and how I have to behave? And I struggled with this. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And when I think about it, I think about not just my father, but the history. And my mother yesterday, and I hope she's listening, reminded me, she said, by the way, don't think that vision is just on your father's side. My mother grew up in Antwerp. She wasn't Hasidic, but she was serious. She grew up in a very serious Orthodox family in Antwerp. And she said that after the war, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe came to Antwerp. And when he came, his daughter was my mother's age, and they asked if they could spend the day together, and she spent the day. And my grandmother entertained the Rebbe's wife, but there was a family connection there too. And so what is my responsibility, and what do I want to demonstrate to my kids and to the future generations about this? And the conclusion that I came to, and I really did struggle with it, is I do have a responsibility here. That the commandment to honor and to fear your parents doesn't end when they die. And we know that because we say Kaddish. And we say Kaddish every day, 3 times a day, and it's a big burden for a year. And then we say it again every year on their yurtzeit, on the date of their death. And as we will on Saturday, we say it, every regel, every Jewish holiday. Our obligation to our parents doesn't end then, and mine didn't end when my father died. This was important to him. It meant a lot to him. He gave me the freedom to decide what to do, what charities to support. And I could support just the ones, the JCC and JTS and Jewish Week and the Egalitarian Kotel and Shefa, and the ones that I really support in UJA. But that's not his legacy. And so I felt I have an obligation to his legacy, and that's what I've chosen to do. And if you think that I've exaggerated any of this, I'm going to share the screen again for a second and just quickly run you through some of the pictures, because I still, even telling the story again, find it to be so unbelievable. Let's bring photos up. So there's the Strommel, fitted for the Strommel, getting the Strommel. There's me greeting the Rebbe, walking with the Rebbe. All the kids, you can see the gold sashes. If you don't believe what it says, you can see the Rebbe's pointing it out, but here you can see very, very clearly what it says. They're showing me the plans, the ulam, the big poster with the picture of my dad and my family visiting, my father-in-law, walking into the ulam, lighting the candle. Here's the crowded auditorium, all the kids. On the right there, the tall guy is the mayor. You can see right at the top, the big picture of my father. So you can see I've exaggerated none of this story. And there we are saying Kaddish. And so I've decided that we're going to support the school. As I told them, we're going to give them less than they want and more than I wanted to give. And I think at the end of the day, there will be another school in Israel controlled by a Rebbe that we like, that is warm, that my father had a relationship with, that my kids will get to know, and that their legacy will continue. And so, my kids, my strommel arrived, and my kids all got a chance to wear it and touch it and hold it and appreciate a little part of their heritage. And so, to conclude, before I take any questions, if there's time, I want to quote Rabbi Soloveitchik, who tells an awful story in this month's issue of Commentary. And it's awful as a story can be. And it takes place at the time of the Nazis, the time of the Holocaust. And the Nazis, for whatever reason, want to punish some Jews that are in a prison camp or a concentration camp. And they look for fathers and sons, and they take a father and they put him on the gallows, standing on a chair, noose around their neck. And the son is standing next to him and they give the son a gun. And the Nazi holds a gun against the son's head. And they say that to the father, you have to tell your son to kick the chair or we will shoot him. So the father yells at this particular son, kick the chair. You have to kick the chair. And the son, not just worried about losing his father, which of course he is, who he loves, but who's clearly religious and says, but father, kibud av, I cannot kill my father. You taught me I have to respect my father. And they go back and forth. The father saying, kibud av means that you will not let me see my son get killed. Kick that chair. And after much pleading, the son finally kicks the chair and the father dies. And when the American soldiers find the boy, the first thing he asks for when he sees a Jewish guy is he says, I need tshuva. I need to put on tefillin and ask for tshuva. Can you help me do this? Can you teach me how to do this? Because I did not honor my father. And what Rav Soloveitchik says, how he finishes this article, and I found it so meaningful. And the article is called The Best Revenge. He says, yet to Jews, another obligation, and this another obligation besides revenge, applies as well. That of honoring our father and mother, of revering the past, and allowing it to live through us. We bear their tefillin, or in my kids' case, the talit or the shtramel. We kindle their candles. We pronounce their prayers. And we become thereby part of an internal, indestructible, resurrected people. And we continue to embrace these rituals, not merely because it is the best revenge, though of course it is, but first and foremost, one, because doing this is the essence of our eternity. Two, because it connects us to who came before us. And three, because we believe that by doing this, those who died, like my father and my grandparents and my brother, still live. And so, yes, I will be part of building a school that my kids and grandkids and great-grandkids will never go to, whose kids will look down upon a lot of the good that I think I do, but that will still be a connection, an important connection between me and my previous generations. I'm happy to answer any questions if we have any time.
Yes, it looks like someone asked a question. Do the same concepts, rules apply to in-laws?
So that's an excellent question. And I have to say, I have no idea, but because my in-laws are on this call, I will say absolutely 100% it does.
Another question was about abusive parents. What is our responsibility to them?
So the fact that you have abusive parents doesn't change your responsibility to them, and the rabbis are very clear on this. So obviously you have to protect yourself, and what you cannot do is anything that is a chilul Hashem. You can't desecrate. If your parents ask you to desecrate the Sabbath, you can't do that, but you have to deny that in a respectful way. The Rambam speaks about if your parents tell you they want to be cremated, what do you do? Because you're not allowed to be cremated according to Jewish law. And you have to tell them, listen, I can't do that for you. I love you and I respect you, but if you want that to happen, you're going to have to find someone else to do that for you.
A couple of people have asked if you could replay the video of your dad with audio because the audio didn't go through. If you could try that again.
Sure. I just want to say hi to, I got John, Adam, and Bev on my screen here. Thanks for coming, guys. Let's see if I can get there. Do you know how to make the audio work?
I think you have to share audio separately.
How do we do that?
See, I think if you share screen, Oh, it says through Chrome. Are you on Chrome or on the app?
I'm on the app.
Yeah. Anyone know how to do that? If not, we'll unfortunately have to move on to the next thing because I'm not exactly sure how to share audio. Because
I'm playing it. Do you hear it?
apparently it's an option on the top of the screen. Oh, view option. I think there is something that says, or put on your speakers louder.
Oh.
Not through the AirPods. Yeah, if you just put your speakers.
How did we do?
That was beautiful. Thank you. You're getting a lot of thumbs up. Someone asked, choosing between your spouse happiness and parents' happiness, how far do you go between shalom bait and honor your parents?
Wow. My wife is here too, so I don't know the answer to that. Joy, I see Joy here. Do you have an answer? Michael, I've got all my rabbis here. Someone help.
Joy, do you want me to unmute you?
Come on, Jeff. You know the right answer to that.
Yeah, the right answer is you make your wife happy.
Absolutely. Although Michael may disagree. You're on mute, Michael.
Oh, Michael, I will unmute Michael. Michael Paley, unmute.
Mute.
There you go. You're good.
You're good.
I think the Rambam would say that the way that you see the face of God is in honoring your father, because he also bears your face and you can see the face of God through that. It makes you into your true self in order for you to be the best husband and the best partner that you can be with your wife. And so they never would ask the question one against the other because they see it as one act of emotional integrity.
Yeah.
You don't think, eh? I always pick my wife. I suppose everybody has to, as soon as they walk away from into marriage, has to pick their partner.
Any other questions? It looks, let me see if there's anyone else. Oh, did you get to do the other two things you were supposed to do that day?
Yes, I went to the school and it was in terrible disrepair. My father would have been very, very upset. He really took a lot of pride in it. And I visited my grandparents' graves. And the interesting thing, when my mom was telling me the story yesterday about her connections to Vishnitz, that seems to have gotten lost in my 53 years. She also told me that her grandmother, who survived the war and moved to Israel and lived in Israel, who I never met, is also buried in that cemetery. And so I've visited my grandparents and my uncle, but I've never visited my mom's grandmother. So that is a task for my next trip.
Great. Any other questions? That's all I see in the chat. If anyone also wants to raise their hand, I'm happy to unmute you.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined to hear my little journey here, to my friends Marvin and Leslie and David Jaffe and Michelle Lachter. And I really appreciate, Moshe, of course, for putting me up to this, and Joy for really making this happen and drawing me into the JCC. Thank you all very much.